Hi, ocean lovers. Welcome to Season 2, Episode number 6 of Dive Stories, brought to you by PADI, helping millions around the world to seek adventure and save the ocean. I'm your host, Ocean Allison, and on today's episode, I'm chatting with ocean plastic pollution activist, Kristal Ambrose. During this episode, Kristal shares all about her efforts to reduce plastic pollution in the Bahamas and beyond, how scuba diving has played a key role in inspiring her passion for conservation, and her fundamental thoughts on the importance of connecting with the underwater world. All that and more coming right up. Thanks for being here. Ready to jumpstart your next underwater adventure? Good news! We're offering Dive Stories podcast listeners an exclusive 20% off all PADI recreational e-learning courses. With PADI e-learning, you can start your next dive adventure right now from the comfort of your own home before connecting at any time with a PADI dive center or resort to complete your in-water training. Head to PADI.com/courses to select which dive course is right for you and use code PODCAST, that's PODCAST, to take advantage of this exclusive 20% off discount. You're listening to Dive Stories. We bring the underwater world to you through in-depth conversations with inspiring divers from around the globe. Thanks for diving in with us as we seek adventure and save the ocean. Happy listening and happy diving. Today's Dive Stories guest is ocean plastic pollution activist Kristal Ambrose. Kristal, welcome to Dive Stories, and thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Hi, Allison. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you, but we're actually going to start this podcast out by diving right into what we call the Dive 5. And how the Dive 5 works is at the start of each episode, I ask our guest 5 rapid fire questions about their experience as a diver and an ocean lover. So what do you think, Kristal? Are you ready to answer the Dive 5?
Let's do it.
Okay. Number 1, where is the first place you ever took a breath underwater?
Nassau, Bahamas.
Okay. Number 2, in one word, how does scuba diving make you feel?
Free.
Okay. Number 3, what is your favorite ocean animal?
The sea turtle.
Okay. Number 4, what is the most common plastic item you find in the water and on beaches?
Microplastics and plastic bottles.
Okay. And then the last one, number 5, in just one word, what does the ocean mean to you?
Life.
Amazing. Thank you so much for answering the Dive 5, Kristal. We're going to get a little more in-depth now and jump into the core of the interview. And I want to start out by actually just talking a bit about plastic pollution in general. You know, for those listeners that maybe aren't fully aware or they just need a refresher, you know, why is plastic a problem for the ocean?
So plastic is a problem for the ocean for the exact same reasons that makes it a valuable or a useful product, right? And that's the fact that it lasts forever. It never goes away, and it's so convenient for us to use on land, but it's a major inconvenience for the environment and our oceans in particular. It injures fish, marine life like seabirds, marine mammals as well are affected, and also it can impact human health. And this is all because of the amount of plastic that's used daily and also the amount of plastic that's made globally every day.
And, you know, with that, I'm curious for you, what was like the main experience or maybe a couple of the main experiences that you had initially that really opened your eyes to the harmful impacts of plastic pollution in the ocean?
It was seeing it firsthand. So in 2012, I got the opportunity of a lifetime to sail across the Pacific Ocean with the Five Gyres Institute to study the Western Garbage Patch. And it's a part of the Great Pacific Gyre. And while we were there, we came across all these different types of plastic, and we stumbled on this netball. And the netball is a huge conglomerate of discarded or abandoned fishing gear that kind of acts like a magnet, so it attracts all these different types of plastic and other marine debris that's floating in the ocean. And when I saw it, my initial reaction was, humans are so nasty. Why are they polluting the ocean. It's their fault. Not thinking I was human until I started to dissect the debris that we collected. And there was toothbrushes and bottle caps and old toys and basically all of the things that I had with me on this expedition. And I realized I was a huge part of the problem. I was the biggest plastic offender that I knew. And if I could be a part of the problem, equally so, I could be a part of the solution. But it took me seeing it and feeling it for that light bulb to go off in my head.
Yeah, wow, what an amazing experience. I imagine challenging, but it sounds like you took those challenging thoughts and experiences and feelings and turned it around. And like I mentioned, you've gone on to do some absolutely amazing work in the world of plastic pollution, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later. But actually, to kind of rewind a little bit, Kristal, what was your relationship like with the ocean as a young girl, growing up in the Bahamas?
I always loved the ocean. And I was always curious about it. And I knew, when I was in grade school or elementary school, I wanted to be an oceanographer. But then I realized I was more interested in the animals in the ocean, so that drew me towards marine science. So growing up, I would always go to the beach with my father. Even to this day, when I come home, we wake up first thing in the morning and we go for a swim. So I was always curious about this big blue that surrounded the island that I grew up on. And I always wanted to know more about it.
That's amazing. I love that you and your dad still do, you go in the ocean together just like you did when you were young. That's so special. Now, I also want to chat about your scuba diving journey. Like we talked about, you had this really amazing connection with the ocean growing up. And then at the age of 17, you're introduced to the world of scuba diving. And when you're 18, you actually became a PADI dive master. So, I'm curious, what sort of role would you say that becoming a scuba diver and ultimately a dive master at a relatively young age, what role did that play in inspiring all of the amazing work that you've gone on to do?
Oh man, it was the foundation of Crystal Ocean, right? And if I could apply the life lessons of scuba or the lessons of scuba to life, it would be looking your fears in the face and facing them head on. As much as I love the ocean, I was still afraid to be in water where I couldn't stand or be completely submerged. So it took me overcoming that fear and getting acquainted with scuba diving to connect fully to the ocean, right? And with me being able to explore even more depths of the ocean on scuba, I was able to understand the ecosystems, the layout, the physiology and the biology of the animals that are there, and the need for conservation and feeling of, even though you're afraid, when you're in the midst of something, you don't realize the fear because you're so fulfilled by what it is that you're doing. And that was scuba for me, and that is now translated to me and this fight against plastic pollution. That even though still I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm in the thick of doing something, and that's very cool.
Yeah, I would say you're definitely in the thick of doing something for sure. And then, yeah, it's amazing to hear how diving really inspired so much of, what you still are doing today. So thank you so much for sharing. Now, with the name of this podcast being Dive Stories, I asked this question to all of our guests. What is one of your most memorable dive stories that you've ever had?
My first scuba diving experience, I chickened out. We were at this dive site in Nassau called Nari Nari, and it was the site where they filmed Jaws for the Revenge. And in Jaws, there was this Cessna airplane, and Jaws bit the back of the plane. So we were at the wreck, right? So this Cessna airplane was beneath me, and I was doing a discover scuba diving course, and I was the first one in the water. So I'm just waiting there, my BCD inflated, brags in my mouth. I'm waiting for everyone to get in the water, and all I could think is, he's beneath me. Get me out of the water. And there was no way that you couldn't tell me that Jaws was underneath me, getting ready to come and get me. So I chickened out and I didn't do it. But I was like, there's no way I'm going out like that. I have to try this again. So 6 months or so after that, I went back and I tried again. And that was really amazing, to take that first breath underwater, and to see everything around me was overwhelming. And that was all I needed to know that this is what I wanted to do.
Okay, ocean lovers, it's time for the dive log, the part of the show where we feature an epic dive story from one of our amazing listeners. This episode's listener dive story comes from PADI instructor Mohammed El Nomrasi about his experience diving in the Red Sea. Let's dive in.
Hello, I'm Mohammed Al-Nomrosi. I'm a PADI open water scuba instructor. I'm also an engineer and an MBA holder. Scuba diving is my passion, and I'm lucky being close to the mesmerizing Red Sea. I had my first underwater bubbles back in 2008 in Dahab, and I got completely hooked. I kept looking for those new experiences in the Red Sea, whether it's shark diving, drift dives with dramatic drop-offs, wreck dives, and many other types of diving. This fueled my passion to pass those first experiences over to my fellow divers in Egypt. What I really love is families. First time experiences in diving. I had two families where the dads were former students of mine and they wanted to introduce their spouses and their children to diving.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for sharing your love of diving and teaching diving in the Red Sea with us. Listeners, if you have an epic dive story to share too, head to padi.com/podcast to record and submit one of your most memorable dive stories for a chance to be featured in an upcoming episode. We love hearing from our global community of PADI divers, so head to padi.com/podcast today. And now, back to this episode. So, shifting gears here a little bit, Kristal, in 2013, you founded your amazing nonprofit, Bahamas Plastic Movement. And I want to highlight a few of the primary focuses of the organization, one of which is Plastic Camp. So I'd love if you could share with listeners and myself what Plastic Camp is all about.
Yeah, so Plastic Camp, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Tuition-free summer program that's hosted by our organization, Bahamas Plastic Movement, that takes our students on a holistic journey from the problem with plastic to solutions to this environmental crisis. And it does this by placing our students right at the center of being solutions. So over the course of 5 to 7 days, they're engaged in scientific research, advocacy, and campaign building, community outreach, art and activism. And we just have the best time learning and growing and building our Plastic Warrior family unit. It's really what I look forward to every year.
Yeah, no, I mean, every photo and video that I have ever seen of Plastic Camp, it's just looks like the most fun ever. That, not only are the students having so much fun, but you're having so much fun. So it just looks so great. What are the typical ages of the students, and are they all local Bahamians?
Yeah, so all of our students are local Bahamians, and our camp is predominantly on the island of Eleuthera, but we've worked on 8 different islands around the Bahamas, and our students range in ages from 5 all the way up to 16, 17 years old. And we've even had students as young as 3 years old be a part of the program and excel, like, they're super into it.
That's amazing. They can't wait. So another incredible area of focus for Bahamas Plastic Movement is policy and advocacy, which I know you touched on a little bit. And amazingly, we have to point this out. In 2018, you and a group of students were actually successful in engaging with the Bahamian government to bring about a nationwide ban on single-use plastics, which actually went into effect in 2020. So what does this single-use plastics ban mean to you personally, and what sort of impact do you see it having so far?
What that ban means to me is knowing that even when you don't have the tools or all of the understanding, it shouldn't stop you from going after doing something. When we approached that ban, I didn't know anything about policy or legislation or anything like that. but I learned together with the students, and that was really important for me. So we brought in a social scientist, and she taught us how to make surveys, and we went in the community to get people's attitudes and perceptions on if they would support a ban. Then we worked with a local lawyer, and she taught us everything about law and policy and how do you write a bill for a ban in the Bahamas, and how would the process for that to becoming a law would be like. So that aspect of learning and growing with the students and having something be so localized, that was very meaningful to me. So since then, like you mentioned, the law has come into effect, and that's a ban on single-use plastics, including straws, utensils, styrofoam, mass balloon releases, and plastic bags. And to date, we've seen a lot of support. Even, I was actually on a trip with the students. We were going to a conference, and we went to a Wendy's in the airport. And even there's no plastic. They have paper straws. They have paper containers for their food trays. And it's like, yo, we did this. So it's a very proud moment. Even though this is great, and we know that there's still a lot more work to do, we still need to address waste management and the other types of waste that we produce in the country. But for now, it's a really good step.
Yeah. And I imagine also, for those students that come to Plastic Camp, it's just kind of growing the momentum and the inspiration for those students. Like, wow, whether they were the ones that were involved or not, it's like, wow, look at what we're actually doing. Like, I imagine such great inspiration for students at Plastic Camp.
Yes, and the inspiration and the pride, and this is trickled into so many aspects of their lives, especially as they left our program. A lot of them have used that experience to apply for college, to apply for scholarships. And so often, they call me and they see, they will go to the store and see that you can't get a plastic bag, and they'll be like, Miss Kristal, we get this. So it's still very much pride attached to that.
Yeah, that's so amazing. Now, shifting gears a bit, Kristal, I do want to touch on the PhD program that you're currently enrolled in at World Maritime University in Sweden. Can you tell us a bit about what the focus of your PhD research is and why it's important to you to, be in Sweden and earning your PhD?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, why did you go to Sweden? And Sweden chose me. I'm at the World Maritime University, and I'm here on a scholarship. And this scholarship is so divinely aligned because it's a part of a program called the Closing the Circle program that looks specifically at marine debris threats and solutions for the Eastern Caribbean region. And everyone was asking me, are you going to do a PhD? And I was like, no, only if I could do it on this, this, and this. And everything what I wanted to do it on, it's the mandate and mission of this program. So here I am, and what I'm looking at is marine debris monitoring strategies for the wider Caribbean region. So how do we not only create policies and interventions to reduce or to manage marine debris issues in the Caribbean region, but how do we get an understanding on what's happening throughout the region as it relates to the extent of the problem? And we can't do that without science as our first step. So trying to harmonize and coordinate monitoring interventions throughout the region is what I'm looking at. And how do you then take that data and translate that into policy? It's easier said than done, I'm learning.
Yeah, well, it's so amazing that aligned for you and that you're going for it. I imagine it's a massive undertaking, but yeah, I mean, I can only imagine that you are going to be really finding out some really important key information and then, go on to implement things to actually, again, help the plastic pollution problem, not in just the Bahamas, but throughout the Caribbean. So cool. To wrap up, Kristal, what advice or words of inspiration do you have for anyone in the world that's interested in getting involved in ocean conservation efforts?
My first advice would be to go into nature. Despite your fears, despite whatever you're feeling, you gotta get connected, and you gotta know your why. For me, this whole thing about plastic is connected to my love for the ocean. And as I dive into this PhD and I understand how these policies and things work, um, it's hard. It's hard doing the hard stuff, the paperwork. But the only thing that's keeping me going is my love and connection to the ocean and to this work. So I would say get connected and see the wonders of the ocean before we even get so discouraged by everything that's going wrong with the ocean. Find that love, find that passion, and use that to fuel you to protect what you love.
Yeah, amazing. And one thing I've heard you touch on in different interviews and videos that you've been a part of is the importance of like representation, the importance of going through adversity or whatever obstacles we might build up in our minds or that society maybe tells us are obstacles for us to achieve what we want to achieve. So, can you touch on that a bit as well?
Yeah. Representation is important for me because when I grew up, I didn't see people that looked like me that, loved the ocean. So much so that even in my culture, when I would be out on the boat or out in the ocean, it'd be like, what are you doing here? Girls don't swim. Girls don't be in the ocean or on boats. So it's so important for young Bahamian boys and girls and young men and women of color to see that we do have a right to this space. And there are people that do dominate the space that do this work. And seeing that makes it possible for someone coming after me to know that this is attainable for them as well. So I think that representation really matters. And even when we take that one step further, rather than just working in the field, but enjoying the space as well. I come from a country where tourism is our main industry, and they don't necessarily explore what people are coming there to explore, So seeing this representation means that it's not only for tourists to enjoy, but as a citizen of this place, it's your birthright to enjoy the ocean, to enjoy the sea, and to not keep it clean just for the purpose of someone visiting, to keep our economy afloat, but for us to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, amazingly well said. Thank you so much, Kristal. On behalf of our global community of PADI divers and ocean lovers, thank you for inspiring a new generation of plastic pollution activists in the Bahamas, for your commitment to solving the plastic pollution crisis really globally. And thank you for joining us on Dive Stories. It's really been so wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual, and I just want to say thank you for this platform. I always say, even though my nickname is Kristal Ocean, I feel like Kristal Landlocked because of the PhD. I'm always behind the computer, but doing the Dive 5 and talking about dive stories and talking about the ocean, is so nostalgic, and I feel even happier just talking about it. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to Dive Stories. You've just heard Kristal Ambrose, ocean plastic pollution activist. To learn more about Kristal and her work, you can follow along on social media at Bahamas Plastic Movement and visit bahamasplasticmovement.org. Inspired to connect with the ocean further? Good news! We're offering Dive Stories podcast listeners an exclusive 20% off all PADI recreational e-learning courses. With PADI e-learning, you can start your next dive adventure right now from the comfort of your own home. E-learning allows you to complete the online portion first and then connect at any time with a PADI dive center or resort to complete your in-water training. Whether you're just starting or continuing your diving journey, PADI e-learning is an ideal way to jumpstart your next underwater adventure. So head to PADI.com/courses to select which course is right for you and use code PODCAST, that's PODCAST, to take advantage of this exclusive 20% off discount. This has been Dive Stories, brought to you by PADI. Seek adventure, save the ocean. If you love the ocean and enjoyed this podcast episode, please subscribe to Dive Stories in your podcast app and feel free to leave a review. Follow PADI on social media and head to PADI.com to join our community of torchbearers working together to seek adventure and save the ocean. I'm your host, Ocean Allison. Happy diving!